Hello everybody, welcome along to the TGP series. It's Tuesdays, which means it's TGP1 night, and we are in Shanghai, China for our return to the Chinese Grand Prix. Great to be here, great to be in this state-of-the-art venue built all the way back in 2004 by Herman Tilke. Remember him? Well, tonight we're not going to be crowning a champion straight away, but we could well crown a champion later on this evening. Your championship leader, the Confessor, back tonight after an absence, and I said unlikely, or very unlikely to clinch the title in China, but very much on the cards for Imola. So we'll keep an eye on that as the evening progresses. But as ever, I'm Mike Noon. Joining me in the commentary box is the Soft Cop. Softy, good evening. Welcome along. And what are you expecting to see from tonight's racing?
The Confessor domination in China, the Confessor domination in Imola, an easy championship win for the Confessor, second, and he's actually currently half a second up on his current lap time, so he's about to absolutely annihilate everyone, which is to be expected.
And obviously, as Jack Hickey just popped up into second place, just a few thousandths, a couple of hundredths, I should say, off John. John went provisional pole just before we went live. We are now watching the Confessor, as he said, half a second up, so the McLaren driver in the driving seat, it must be said, for the title.
Oh,
only spun. So not in the driving seat right about now. But Softy, so he's got an advantage of 40-something points. So yes, he actually can't win the title in China, but can win it, of course, in Imola. The points difference he will need after Imola is 52 points. So worth bearing that in mind. And Softy, how impressed have you been with the Confessor this year? Obviously, he hasn't been at every single race, but the level of domination we've seen when he has been here has just been like something we haven't seen for an awful long time.
Yeah, I mean, fair play to the Confessor. He's absolutely annihilated the field in terms of his consistency and an outright pace. And when someone's fast and consistent, it becomes a lot easier to win, really. But yeah, last week he wasn't here due to, I think, being in hospital with pneumonia, and the week before that he had to sort of pull out halfway through Singapore. So it's been a confessorless 2 weeks, really. But he is back, and currently in third, and he is looking to clinch that title, which I think it's more a matter of when rather than if he clinches it, barring any issues, of course, for him. We actually saw him disconnect a bit earlier on just before we went live, so it's possible that he could disconnect or something, which could cost him. But yeah, he's been the class of the field, and it's up to everyone else next season and the future seasons to sort of bring up their pace, as we know they do have. But yeah, they've just not performed this season.
Well, we've got that all to look forward to, of course. We've got just over 3.5 minutes left of this qualifying session. Most drivers in the pits getting ready for their final runs. So let's give you a quick rundown of the provisional qualifying order. So your provisional pole sitter at the moment is Jean-Luc Taylor in the Williams on a 32.7. Then we've got Jack Hickey, reigning TGP1 champion, outgoing TGP1 champion in P2. The Confessor, your championship leader by 46 points, P3, with his main rival down the man in P4. Phil Boswell is 5th, Court Gill is 6th, Magic Poop Cannon, the TGP2 driver, P7, ELT Jordan in P8, Don Smith 9th, Jack Pearson rounding out the top 10. He's just come across the line to put himself in P7 now. And then we've got Mr. Chiapelli in 11th, Viva Lamerco 12th, Beakai 13th, Mayor Quimby 14th, Cam hasn't set a lap yet in 15th, and Dan Morris we've just seen get disqualified in 15th. Hello to everybody watching along with us tonight. Hello to Theo Hickman in the comments. Thank you very much for your support as always. We hope you're going to enjoy the racing just as much as we are. But Softy, as we've got a lot of drivers getting ready then for their final qualifying laps, what are we going to be expecting to see as a pole time?
Well, I mean, from the Confessor's last lap, he was just under 6/10 faster than his current time. So, I'd probably be saying it is going to be like a 32-1, 32-2, really, if he nails this final run. And to be honest, I really don't think anyone else can match that. Obviously, we see Jean doing a 32.7 and Jack Hickey doing a 32.7. So, they're currently 1-2, but again, as we've seen a lot of this season, they don't have the outright pace that they need when it matters. And so it's sort of even if the Confessor does mess up, I think on pace-wise, he's clearly got an advantage in outright pace.
Well, we'll see, obviously, how we get on in a few moments' time. We've got Cam just starting a lap at the moment. 1 minute and 40 seconds left of qualifying. We've got Theo Hickman saying, "Come on, Jack," in the comments. Currently your man P2 in qualifying. And Chris Thurgood asking what movie everybody is watching. So, we're now watching Cam in the Aston Martin, the number 2 on the front of his car. And Softy, big week for Cam last week, obviously winning a race and crossing the line first in the other one, only to get a penalty after the race. But how much does he need a good lap here, and how much does he need to carry that form through now into the remaining races this season?
Yeah, he does. I mean, what is this week and next week, I think, are the final 2 weeks of TGP1 this season, so it's flew by. But yeah, Cam will want to be, finishing on a high, to be honest, because you can take that momentum into the next game and the next season, of course. But he knows he's got the pace. We all know he's got the pace. It's just that consistency that he needs, really. And just a quick one on the Confessor update. He was 0.6 up in the first sector alone. So it looks like he's probably going to go into potentially the 31s if he gains even more time in this final sector. But yeah, New Zealand Cam, he's got the pace. It's just he needs to work on his consistency more than anything.
Well, let's look at the Confessor then. 1 corner to go. We're up to the line. Surely we're going to see a new provisional pole time. We certainly are. It's a 1 minute 32.0. He put 7 tenths on his nearest challenger. One of those nearest challengers, Jean-Luc Taylor, who's about to come around the final corner to start a flying lap. Jack Hickey has just begun one, and we're getting his Sector 1 time now, and he's dead heat with his personal best previously.
Yeah, obviously very easy to lose and gain time in that first sector, purely because you've got the snail, turn 1, turn 2, and then turn 3. Very easy to mess up there, as we see Magic Poop Cannon and Jack Pearson finishing their laps and not improving on their times. But yeah, Jack Hickey, not far off of what he's done, obviously matching his first sector time. But what's he going to do in this middle sector? Is it going to be an improvement? And it is 0.5 tenth though. But yeah, still nowhere near what the Confessor can do. So I reckon it's still going to be, 7 tenths, 6.5 tenths that he's going to have that pole time. He's got a Red Bull in front of him as Jack Hickey, so this should give him a bit of a slipstream, and it does look like ERT Jordan is probably playing the team game there potentially, because he's not going to finish this lap with any sort of pace. And there he goes, he pulls over, brake at about 100 metre boards here, trying to avoid locking up, hit the apex, short shift if you can to gain that traction, and now it's the final corner. Very easy to mess this up. You want to hit the curb on the inside, but not hit it too hard, because it will unsettle the car, and he actually takes it quite tentative through there. But is it going to be improvement on his lap time? It is a 32.6.
Yep, so he moves himself back onto the front row. Dan the man just coming onto the main straight now. Jean-Luc Taylor just at the end of the main straight. Jean-Luc Taylor finding a little bit of time, but at the moment, that little bit of time isn't going to be enough to give him back a front row starting position. John's going to be the first of him and down the man to the line then. 1 corner to go for John. He flicks it in. The Williams sticks to the ground and he comes towards the line, and it's a 32.4. Jack Hickey's dreams of a front row start have gone, but what about Dan the man? The man who can still challenge for the title in theory. He comes across the line. He can't improve on his 4th place grid spot, and he's going to be 3 places behind his title rival at the start of the race.
Yeah, and I'd just like to say, as the discussion always rages on, it's a pad 1-2, so pad OP still this season it seems, and China I think is clearly a pad circuit there. But yep, the Confessor on pole, but a bit of a disappointment for Dan the man there, 8 tenths off the pole time, but not really what he wanted. He needs to be as close to the Confessor as possible, just try and limit and put him under pressure.
I have to say, it's pretty close to the field. I know we take the Confessor out, but you look at Jean all the way down to the top 10 within a second. So good stuff going on there with a few drivers mixing it up in perhaps places we haven't seen them doing so yet. I'm drawing attention mainly to Court in there. I think he's going to be sick, but we'll give you a rundown of our grid order in just a few moments' time. So here we go then. Confessor takes yet another pole position with Jean joining him on the front row. Jack Hickey, reigning TGP1 and outgoing TGP1 champion, is P3. Dan the man is P4. Phil Bargewell is lined up in 5th with Court Gill. Great qualifying for him in 6th. Very good qualifying as well for Magic Poop Callan, the TGP2 driver, up in P7. ERT Jordan, good session for him as well in P8. Jack Pearson in 9th, with Viva Lamerco rounding out the top 10. Speed Kai is in 11th, a race winner yet this season, joined on the 6th row by Cam, also a race winner this season, with Dom Smith in the Aston Martin in 13th. It's an Tauri 14th, 15th, with Dan Morris disqualified from the session down in 16th. So, Softy, we're getting ready then for the race start. So let's, just before we go into things like strategy, hello to Stereogram watching us live as well. Thank you everybody else who's watching us. Do feel free to share your thoughts on the race as things are going live. Lewis Craig with us here as well, saying Magic Hoot can stay in TGP1. I'd certainly agree with that. But Softy, with a little over 30 seconds to go until the race start, what should we be expecting to see from this Grand Prix?
I reckon it could be chaos at turn 1 and turn 2. Very easy to, not give someone enough room, run a bit wide, and then, chaos ensues, really. But as you briefly mentioned, then strategy. You don't start on the softs. It's the worst strategy you could do. Either start on the mediums or potentially the Confessor may start on the hards. But yeah, I'd say medium to soft is probably the better strategy. The softs, I think, last, 2 or 3 laps. So, there's no point really starting on that. But it looks like so far half of the field is starting on those medium tyres. And it appears that the Confessor may be the only one that's on the mediums, on the softs, and he is.
Well then, we've got 5 lights just before the start of this race in China, and it's lights out, we're underway, and it's a good start from the front row. Dan the Man seems to get away well as Phil Bardwell, who's trying to go up the inside of Jack Hickey. Awful start for Jack Hickey, who's dropped down to 6th place as he already tries to go around the outside of Phil Bardwell and caught as he goes to the 2nd and 3rd turns. John has held up to P2 with Dan the Man challenging up the inside now. Through turn 2 they go, winding up the gears as they get on the power as the Confessor has charged away on that softer rubber. But I have to say, it's a real bad start for Jack Hickey, who's now still fighting with Court Gill. Dan the Man up the inside of Jean-Luc Taylor, also on those soft tyres. Jean coming back around the outside. Dan the Man needs those, he needs to get past as soon as possible, and he is past and up into 2nd place. Jean falls into 3rd, and now Court Gill is all over the back of the Williams driver as the Ferraris open the book and gone straight to the rampage at the start of this race.
Yeah, quite cleanly, actually. Now, I say that as ELT Jordan actually clips New Zealand Cam there in that S section. So that's quite unfortunate for him down to the back, because we see Jack Pearson now getting ahead of New Zealand Cam. And Dom Smith is actually falling down the order. Nothing wrong there. It's just, I think he's got a bit of lack of pace at the minute, getting bashed up with different drivers. As we see, Jean is probably going to look and try and get the DRS, or should I say, 4 tenths. But it looks like Dan the Man is safe down this main back straight for this lap.
Yeah, as they came to the end of the hairpin, we got Magic Puke kind of having a look at Phil Bardwell there as well. Phil Bardwell and Jack Hickey well positioned to have their crash of the season. Cam goes up the inside of Jack to work on his recovery. Got a little bit squirrely, actually. Coming out of that, and talking of squirrely, Kieran's off. He's off and in the wall, and he's out of the race. And if we thought Cam got a bit squirrely earlier in the lap, that's got nothing on Kieran, who's heading for an early bath at this rate. So disappointment for him. Magic Poop Cannon has picked up a penalty already. That's very early on to be receiving his orders from the stewards. But nonetheless, it's now, interestingly, look at that softy. Jean-Luc Taylor putting pressure on Dan the Man.
Yeah, I mean, again, the soft to medium strategy, it's good for the first 1 or 2 laps, but the only downside that Jean has is he's got Dan the Man in front of him, where he needs a bit of clear space to really make those mediums work, I'd say, and sort of close down the Confessor as much as he can, because the longer he's getting held up behind Dan the Man, the bigger that gap's going to be, and that's always going to play into the Confessor. And the Confessor does have a pace advantage over the rest of the field, of course. He's got 1.7 seconds on Dan the Man, so the Confessor, I think, will be pushing as hard as he possibly can. He actually still has 95% ERS, whereas Dan the Man's got 68 and Jean has 71, so clearly the Confessor is pulling that gap, and he's not using any ERS, so it's quite obvious at how much of a difference and pace advantage the Confessor has at this stage of the race.
Yeah, well, he's really flexing his muscles, it must be said, out the front at the moment. He's got nearly a 2-second gap already, and we haven't even really reached the end of the second lap yet. So the Confessor flexing his muscles. He hasn't been able to for the last couple of races. As we said, missed the last couple of races, but hoping to get his championship aspirations very much back on track tonight, and he's doing exactly what he needs to at the moment. Although Dan the Man in 2nd place, keeping him honest, but this will, at the moment, as things stand, with the Confessor just getting the fastest lap as well, mean he'll be gaining 8 points, which would push that gap up to 54 points, which would mean that if neither of them finished the next race and things finish as they are now, the Confessor would still win the title. So still all to play for. But nonetheless, the Confessor doing exactly what he needs to put himself in position to take that championship. Now, Softy, when are we going to start to see this crossover between the soft tyres starting to struggle and medium tyres coming to their own? As Cam has retired from the race, disappointing for the Aston Martin driver. But are we going to see that starting to come in the next couple of laps, or are we still a little way off that?
I would probably say you should probably see this either this lap or the next lap. So probably lap 3 to 5 is probably the pit window for soft to mediums, of course. Whereas if you're on if you're on the mediums, you probably want to pit in. I'd probably say lap 10. 11.
Sorry to interrupt you there, Softy, but Viva La Merco's just gone for a spin, and he was closing down Magic Poop Cannon, rounding on board actually with the Haas driver, but now dropped out of the top 10 and down to 13th place. So sorry to interrupt you there, Softy, but drama for the Haas.
Yeah, obviously I'm not too sure what happened there. Probably very easy to lose at that little mini straight. The curves are a bit brutal here, but yeah, I think they should start pitting any time in the next 2 laps really for the if you want to go on to the mediums or hards. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see as you see 3.1 second gap now for the Confessor. So yeah, John is not able to put pressure on Dan the Man at this stage. He's just within the DRS, but he clearly does not have the pace of Dan the Man at present.
Yeah, Magic Poop Cannon we just saw flying past us and coming into the pits. And he does seem to be the only person that has come into the pits so very early to be coming in on those soft tyres, perhaps going to the hards. It should be said there was a 22% chance of rain in this race, but it doesn't look like that rain is coming, so it looks like it's going to be a dry race throughout. Phil Bargewell was still keeping Jack Hickey honest. Phil Bargewell, as we said, actually got a very good start, very momentarily got up to 4th place, but was a bit cautious, unlike Phil, into turn number 1, and lost out in the end as Court and Jack Hickey ending up moving up ahead of him. So not ideal there for Phil. Meanwhile, Dan the Man starting to put a bit of a gap over himself and Jean-Luc Taylor. Jean just under a second behind the Ferrari driver now. Dan doing what he needs to on those soft tyres, but there is a gap back to Court, who has got Jack Hickey filling his mirrors. Jack Hickey winning the last time out, of course, in Hungary, his first victory of the season. Not been the sort of season he wanted in his title defence.
Yeah, the race is quieting down a bit at the minute, a bit of a gap here and there. DRS trains for 4th, 5th and 6th. It seems Jack Pearson a fair few seconds behind that, but literally I think the closest battle at the minute is probably Jack Hickey and Court at the minute, with Phil Bargewell not close, not too far behind. I just say that Don Smith and Ilty Jordan at the back of the field here, going side by side round that hairpin and up to P12.
Dan the Man's pitted.
Don Smith.
Dan the Man's in the pits. So is that early, Softy? End of lap 4?
Honestly, I'd say that's probably about what you'd expect. Obviously, if you go too early on, let's say lap 4, your tyres are going to finish at the end. But yeah, I think Dan the Man probably is going to try.
Oh, there's been a crash. Jordan and Dom Smith has come together. Sorry again, Softy, to interrupt,
okay.
but
Jack Hickey and Jack Hickey and Court into P3 at the minute. Jack Hickey really trying to put pressure on Court at the minute.
Yep, and getting the up and under, and as we head towards the end of Sector 1, Court's not letting this one go, and they're side by side, heading through the long left-hander, into the right-hander now. Jack Hickey with the inside line. Is Court going to try and hold around the outside? No, he knows that one's done, and Jack Hickey putting a lovely move there, round the outside on the Ferrari driver to move up into 3rd place.
Yeah, very nice there. Good clean racing. Obviously, Jack Hickey probably is thinking, right, I need to start making some moves at the minute, because the soft tyres will be pretty much dying out at the minute, as the Confessor now has a 4-second lead. The fact that Dan has pitted, but it's going to be interesting to see if Dan can close that gap to the Confessor, having that trying to do that undercut. He's going to be on fresher tyres by a big margin around here. If you're going to do it, you're going to want to do that undercut rather than the overcut because of the tyre wear. But yeah, he's got Magic Poop kind of not far behind. So
I was just about to say that. I was wondering if perhaps Dan didn't have the cleanest of stops ever, because there was a good couple of seconds prior. So unless that delta, as we've got the Confessor now in the pits, as is Court Gill, but unless that delta is massive between the tyres you've just stopped on, that's really not worked out very well for Dan, and could be quite a problem, I have to say, for the likes of Court when he eventually comes into pits, which obviously he is at the moment, just leaving his box now. But let's see where Dan and Magic Poop Cannon are. The Confessor only just coming out the pits now. Where's Dan?
He's closed it up.
Yeah, it's closer.
It's closer, but I'd probably say he's probably lost a bit of time, to be honest. So, again, the Confessor does have that outright pace advantage, even on the worn tyres, but it may not have been the cleanest of stops or outlaps for Dan, it seems. But
look at that. I mean, Court's
yeah.
dropped behind Magic Poop Cannon as well. So I think there is quite a delta between fresh and old tyres, because Court was comfortably ahead of Magic Poop Cannon before he stopped, Softy.
Yeah, I mean, things happen. It is very interesting, but obviously Magic Poop Cannon has not stopped. Of course, he did start on those medium tyres, but yeah, Court is a bit further behind as we see Magic Poop Cannon is now actually retired in that fast section. Very easy to lose your rear end there, and that's sadly what he's done.
Yeah, just trying to catch it on the camera now. Can't see, unfortunately, but down to 13 runners left in this race, and meanwhile, the Confessor is your net leader of the race. He has pitted, so the top 7 yet to come into the pits. Dan Morris is trying to get past Mr. Chiapelli at the moment. Williams versus AlphaTauri. Both of these drivers on the medium tyres, started on the medium tyres, and clearly trying to push to as far as they can. Actually, Chiapelli comes to the pits, so that's quite early. End of lap 6 for the medium tyres, unless he's going on to the hards. But choosing now is the time.
If he's going for the softs, that's not a good choice.
Well, we shall see. I hope for his sake he isn't. Meanwhile, out at the front, Jean-Luc Taylor, your leader of the race. Jack Hickey is in second place. Phil Bargewell third. These 3 drivers we're focusing on at the moment haven't come into the pits yet. Using the alternative strategy, Jack Hickey getting a little bit loose on the end of that corner there. And that's allowed Phil Bargewell to close up quite considerably. So Jack Hickey could come under pressure from Phil Bargewell in a minute. And Phil hasn't had, by his own admission, the greatest of seasons. Softy, how much will a good result mean to him tonight to try and end the season on a high?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, he's not had a great season or a last few weeks, to be honest. So he will be wanting to just try and end on a high, end this game better than you started it, really. So it'll be very important for him. At the minute, he's doing a solid job. I think Phil Bargewell's issues this season has just been mistakes rather than lack of pace, to be honest. So a few things that he needs to work on for the next game. But in the end, the next game is a different game. So you never know, he could be winning a lot of races next season and so on. So we just got to wait and see for what F1 23 brings.
Certainly do. And we've got a yellow flag in sector 3. I don't know what happened there. I don't know if something happened between Dom and Jordan again, but very briefly yellow flag between those two. Dan the Man is 5.8 seconds behind the Confessor. It's a massive gap that the McLaren has got in his favour.
For him to be that
It must have done. Because he has lost a lot of time. The Confessor now does set the fastest lap of the race, taking it off of himself. But meanwhile, we're still keeping our attentions turned on Phil Bargewell. Now just 0.8 of a second behind Jack Hickey. These two seem to be sort of trading quick sector times. So Phil Bargewell seemed to be clawing bits back in the first sector, very beginning of the second sector, but Jack Hickey maybe running a little bit more downforce. Or perhaps got to set up a bit kinder to his tyres, but through the middle sector is pulling out a bit of advantage on Phil.
Yeah, obviously these two really, probably they're pushing as hard as they can. Both relatively level on Ur's deployment as well, sort of 50% each there. So, but yeah, this circuit, it is quite hard. It seems like a relatively easy circuit with such a long back straight to overtake, but you gain so much time if you run a bit more downforce through those middle sector and corners and stuff. But then you end up being nowhere on this back straight, so you've got to have a bit of a pace advantage to really attack someone, or you need to be running similar wing levels. But yeah, Phil Bargewell can't get quite close enough yet. But we saw that again with as we see the Confessor up the inside of Viva La Merco there down into the hairpin. But yeah, we saw that with Dan the Man and Jean a bit earlier. Jean just couldn't get close enough to attack, even though Jean's tyres should have been realistically faster at that point. Yeah,
and it's disappointing for them at that moment, because they can't make the sort of inroads they need on the leader of the race. The Confessor is, as we just saw, made his way up into 6th place and is very quickly clawing back all the time he lost in the pit stop. So it's going to be interesting to see where these top 3 come out in relation to Dan the Man, who is in a net 2nd place, but is now 8 seconds behind the Confessor. I don't know if he's got damage or what, but Dan the Man's pace has just fallen off a cliff since the pit stops.
It is, yeah. I mean, I've noticed the Confessor is using a bit more ERS at this moment in the race. Obviously, the first stint he wasn't using any. But yeah, at the minute he is using a bit more ERS, 38% to Dan's 51. So, and obviously bearing in mind, Dan was on about 60% and the Confessor was on 95%, obviously earlier in the race. So the Confessor definitely using more ERS. I think he's just wanting to try and get through this traffic as quickly as he possibly can. So he's probably sacrificing that ERS, knowing that, well, I've sort of got a pace advantage over my competitors. So yeah, but it just means that Dan, is dropping off quite considerably. But it'll be interesting though if Dan does have damage, because I'm thinking, the walls aren't that close around here. So where would he have got damage if he has?
Well, unless he got damage on another car, perhaps. I don't know. But it's quite close between him and Magic Poop Cannon when they came out of the pits. The top three all pit. Wow, look at this. It's a frenzy in the pit. So, Dan the Man, damage or not, now's your time to make up some ground. Jack Pearson's also pitted, so they're double stacking in Mercedes. That's quite brave. We're watching Dan now. He's coming through the final corner. Softy, I think he's going to have them all three of them comfortably. Something's happened to Jean. Oh, no, that's just
I think it's just the camera. Yeah, it's always a bit of dodgy one there. But yeah, Dan does have these. But however, the guys behind him are going to be on fresh softs with 4 laps to go. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly, as we see Court going around the outside of Jack Hickey there, but not quite. So Court on those mediums, slightly further warm, but Jack Hickey on those brand new fresh softs. So it's going to be interesting to see if Jack Hickey can pull away from Court at this stint of the race. But yeah, these lots should pull in down the Man. I'd probably say quite quickly. It just depends on how quick their tyres do go off at the moment.
Yeah, well, we'll keep an eye on that. Court hasn't been able to get past Jack Hickey, and Jack's tyres, we saw him weaving on that little straight there, trying to bring them up into the temperature window. Dan Morris is the only driver yet to stop, currently running in P2, 2 seconds off the race leader, the Confessor, who has got a 9-second advantage over second place man Dan the Man. Court now starting to struggle a little bit. Phil Barswell right in the wheel tracks of the Ferrari driver. Look how much more confidence Phil Barswell has got on acceleration. He's pulling up alongside before we even get to the DRS zone. Both of these two drivers are going to have a DRS. It's going to be a straight drag race down to the hairpin. Who's got the more top speed? I tell you what, that Ferrari is pretty slick in a straight line, but Phil Barswell later on the brakes up the inside of the Ferrari. The Mercedes moves his way up into P6.
Yeah, fair play there, but it does definitely look like Court is running a bit less downforce, which is probably why Phil Barswell managed to get alongside. Obviously, waiting for those tyres to grip up through that long snail, but I think Court should have him down this back straight in half a lap's time again. But yeah, Phil Barswell so far up to P5, and this is allowing Jack Hickey to gain that gap, which he's really wanting to do. So Court is probably, on those medium tyres, probably going to drop away slightly in this middle sector if he's not careful when out of DRS. Yeah,
I think you could be right. But meanwhile, on the battle for the podium places, Jean-Luc Taylor now just half a second behind Dan the Man. Dan the Man, been on those tyres ever since.
I will finish that one for you there, Mike. Yes, he's been on those tyres for a long time at this point.
Yep, don't make it happen with my sound, sorry, don't know what happened there. But yes, so Dan the Man then is going to be easy prey, isn't he? And as you said, Softy, Jack Hickey would be licking his lips at this one, won't he?
He will, yeah. I mean, the time is running out, so Jack Hickey needs to do something quick before those soft tyres do run out of steam. But here we go then. Dan the Man is going super defensive from Jean there, but it looks actually like Dan the Man's got the straight line speed over, obviously, Jean here. But is he going to dive up the inside? He's probably going to think about it, but I think he'll play it safe, and that he does. So he's going to wait another lap, but John needs to get past sooner rather than later. Because,
this is going to reel Hickey in, isn't it?
It is. I mean, he's only set, 1.6 behind now. So the longer Dan the Man holds Jean up, the easier it's going to be. And here we go then. John up the inside, nice and easy. Dan doesn't even go defensive. I think he knows, right, it's a losing battle. He's thinking about holding it around the outside, though, as Jean sort of runs him out of road ever so slightly. But yeah, that is Jean up to P2, and I'm sure he'll pull a bit of a gap now. But Jack Hickey only got, two and a bit laps to go. He needs to hurry up and do something.
Yep, so Dan the Man then relegated to P3. More points he's losing to what is in theory his championship rival. It's a pretty one-sided affair, that one, I have to say. But now, Jack Hickey, fresh off the back of a race win in Hungary, the Red Bull driver sporting a Eurovips tribute helmet, is now looking to try and press home his tyre advantage on Dad them. And you would have thought with 2.5 laps remaining, there might be a chance, though. Look at that, the gap isn't being strung out between Dan and Jean, is it? And Jack is now within a second as well. So Jean, maybe, has he taken too much out of those tyres too quickly, Softy?
It's possible. Again, these tyres are in the last, what I'd say, really the ideal grip level is probably 2 to 3 laps, and then it's all potentially starts to even out with the medium tyres. But yeah, so it's not all said and done as such, but I think Jean will just about have the grip advantage to keep that gap potentially, as we saw the opposite way with Dan and Jean earlier on. But Jack Hickey now 7 tenths behind Dan, and Dan will be really wanting to keep within that 1 second for that DRS to defend in this last 2 laps.
Yeah, so penultimate lap then for these drivers. Dan the man just within a second of Jean. Jack Hickey, meanwhile, 6/10 of a second behind Dan. Dan needs to hold on to a podium here. If he's going to have any opportunity of taking this title, he needs to hold on to this podium. This is a huge 2 laps for Dan the man and his potential title aspirations. And we shall see if he has the bottle to hold on. But he's almost a second outside of Jean now, and this means Jack Hickey. I think Jack Hickey's got 3 opportunities at this, and he's only got 1 more left this lap, I think, Softy.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, the only real overtaking spot is that back straight, and then maybe into turn 3, into the first hairpin, really. So, but Jack Hickey just needs to ensure that he keeps his lines perfect. Just try and set those lines up for that attack. But Dan is still just within that DRS of Jean in second. So this will be helping Dan the man, and actually Dan's got a bit more ERS to use as well. So I don't think Jack Hickey's going to get him this lap at least. So yeah, I think Jack Hickey will be hoping that Jean picks up the pace. But again, as Dom Smith has retired on the second to last lap there. But yeah, so the time is running out for Jack Hickey, but Dan the man it's probably that crossover point now with the tyres. The softs have probably used all of their grip up, really, so that the times and the tyres are levelling out, which is actually allowing, by the looks of it, Dan to close up on John, and John's actually on 11% ERS, so he's derating quite a lot now. So it's Jack Hickey's really right behind him. You can see the grip difference through the corners here, but is it going to be enough on this final lap to really dive it? He's going to try on this hairpin potentially, but I'd probably wait until the back straight.
Well, I'd say Jack's got a chance of second here, and he knows it. He sends it to the inside of Dan. They make contact, but it's a beautiful, opportunistic move from the Red Bull driver, who makes his way up into 3rd place. And now, surely, he's going to have his attention set on Jean-Luc Taylor in front of him. That was a very well-calculated overtake from the Red Bull driver, who moved himself into 3rd place, and he could still get 1 more place.
Oh, Dan the man getting very wide there, actually. So that's probably Dan the man's opportunity gone. He may have 34% ERS to Jack Hickey's 24, but Jack Hickey's probably looking at trying to attack Jean in this back straight. So we'll see if he manages it. But it's the last lap. Jean's got 19% ERS. Jack Hickey's got 30. So it's going to be interesting to see if he closes up now.
Yeah, we'll cut to Shane, the Confessor, who's about to come across the line to win in a few moments' time. But meanwhile, we're focusing on the battle for second. There's just a couple of corners to go. Jean's gone very defensive. Jack Hickey's going to have to go the long way around, and he can't quite do it. They almost touch. But round the final corner, the Confessor has won the race. He wins a dominant display again for the McLaren driver. And Jean-Luc Taylor has somehow held on to second place. Dan the man is all over the road on the last couple of laps. And he does come across the line in the end for 4th. So it's the Confessor, Jean, Jack, Dan the man, Phil Bargewell, good result for him in P5. Court held on to 6th. Viva La Merco, good recovery from him as well in the end. The Haas driver spinning earlier on, but comes across the line to finish in 7th. Jack Pearson in 8th. Dan Morris comes across the line in 9th after getting disqualified from qualifying. Then we got the 2 AlphaTauris, both with penalties. Who's going to finish 10th? Mayor Quimby holds on to 10th place, and the RT Jordan comes across the line and I think inherited 11th. Yes, he did. I think Chiapelli actually dropped behind Jordan there. And Dan Morris, I think rightly so, driver of the day. Good stuff from him. And, well, Softy, another race has gone by. It's another race victory for the Confessor, who has gained 14 points on his title rival. If my math serves me correct, that means he goes in to Imola with a 60-point advantage. And just remember, folks, he needs at least 52-point advantage to be crowned champion with 2 races to go.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much, again, it's when rather than if he wins it, unless, he disconnects and Dan wins, for example. However unlikely that is, it's always a possibility, really. But yeah, the Confessor did everything he needed to. He had the pace on the field, and unfortunate for Dan there. It was looking like he was fighting for that podium, but just lost out at the, in the end. And to be honest, that probably he lost out purely on strategy. Again, the medium to soft is the better strategy, just overall. But even so, the Confessor still won with the worst strategy out of them. So it just shows the pace he's got, and fully well deserved.
Yeah, very well deserved, I have to say. So let's give you a rundown then of the classified order for the Chinese Grand Prix. The Confessor wins once again this season, with John finishing in P2, Jack Hickey P3 with Dan the Man P4, Phil Bargel P5 and Court P6. The same order that they started, but it wasn't as easy as that, I can assure you. Viva Lamerco in P7, Jack Pearson P8, Dan Morris was 9th place, Mayor Quimby P10, Jordan 11th for Chip Kelly's penalties pushing him down to 12th, Dom Smith retired in 13th, Magic Poop Cannon retired from 14th, Cam retired from 15th, and Kai retired from 16th. So Softy, interesting race. Obviously interesting to note as well there that obviously the top 6 finished in the same order that they started, but it definitely didn't feel like that was the definitive paces of each of those drivers. I think it was just how strategy worked out in the end, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think with a track like China, like Singapore, I would say that the strategy is probably, it's not necessarily the biggest thing in 25%, but in circuits where the tyre wear is horrendous, it plays a bigger role, because you want to be on the faster strategy, but there's always a risk of messing it up, getting caught in incidents, because you're on the slower tyre and stuff. So I think if it was a straight everyone's on softs to mediums, chances are it would have been a lot closer than it was. But that's the way it goes sometimes. You have to make the right strategy call. A lot of people did. Unfortunately, Dan the Man in with his pace, it didn't quite work out.
Yeah, well, we can dwell over that in just a few moments' time. Meanwhile, Jean-Luc Taylor has joined us in the commentary box. Jean, fantastic performance from you tonight to cling on, I think it's safe to say, to that second place in the end. How did it feel from where you were sitting in the driver's seat? Because it looked like you had a clear pace advantage over Dan and the others, but just didn't really... It just looked like you struggled towards the end. Could you explain that to us a little bit more?
Yeah, so pretty much where I pitted for softs, I thought I was going to get a fresh set, but it actually gave me used tyres, so they were quite worn on the last couple of laps, and I was running low on the RS, so I got the move done on Dan, but Hickey was closing in, and then he sent it on Dan on the last lap, and then I realised he's a lot quicker, so I was a bit nervous, especially down the back straight, but I just had enough to hold him off and take the P2.
Do you think that if Jack had been able to put it to the inside of you, he would have got you on that last lap there? Obviously, you defended the inside to the middle of the track, and Jack felt that going around the outside was best. Do you think you had him covered regardless on the exit of that turn, or do you think that had he have been able to send it up the inside, he would have got past you?
I think he could have got me. He did actually have a bit of a moment on the exit which cost him, so that's one of the reasons I kept P2, but bit fortunate in the end, but we'll take it, another podium, happy with it.
And obviously you tried the alternative strategy, as it was, in the race. Do you think that was the better option? Do you think you would have been closer to the Confessor had you gone the same route as him?
No, I think Confessor was just too quick. It must have been about 12-13 seconds at the end, so even if I did the same strategy, he was too far ahead. He just had a clear pace advantage. He got lucky with the traffic as well, where he came out in clear air, and every time he pulled a car, it pulled into the pits because of their strategies, so he yeah, he was just too far ahead.
And what can we expect from you in Imola? A track you like? Oh well, it's raining, so does that change anything for you, Jonas? Seeing the persistent rain that we're seeing on our screens in front of us.
I'm happy it's raining because I was not looking forward to Imola in the dry because I have been struggling a bit. So I'm very happy to see the rainfall.
So, Jean, pole position, surely.
I'd like that, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Another front row start would be good. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, why not aim for pole? We'll see what comes of it. As long as I'm near the front end of the grid, I'll be happy with that.
Good stuff. Well, as ever, Jean, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us. Good luck. I hope you got your poncho with you. Softy and I have certainly got our umbrellas with us. Let's hope that our microphones are waterproof. Softy, this is a curveball. Will the Confessor be pleased that it's raining for his title bid, or is this head in hands disastrous moment?
Well, I mean, I think with his consistency this season, I think it won't matter to him, to be honest with yourself, because he has been the most consistent all season round. So I think he knows he's got that consistency. He knows he's got the pace, and again, that takes a lot of pressure off, even if the conditions don't suit you really. So it will. I think it will be a lot harder for the likes of Dan the Man because they've been a bit inconsistent from circuit to circuit and quali session to quali session. But you never know what happens. You never know, the Confessor could bin it immediately in qualifying and start last. So as Jack Hickey's actually disconnected there, so unfortunate for him. Hopefully he should be able to get back in. But yeah, obviously wet tyres probably have less grip in general than the Inters. So people need to be careful, and this is not the easiest of circuits in the dry, let alone the wet.
Yeah, well, interesting. It seems to be mainly full wets. Yes, every driver on the full wets, so we'll keep abreast on that. But Softy, in these sorts of qualifying conditions, we've seen it a lot in TGP2 this season. A lot of drivers staying out there on the tyres, just getting in lap after lap after lap after lap. How vital is that, not only from a confidence point of view, but getting the tyres in the right window, getting the fuel levels down? Is that the best way to do this sort of qualifying session, or are you better just sort of flip-flopping into the pits, making sure everything is all right, where you can be finding time?
100% stay out. Fuel up for, I'd probably say 3 or 4 laps, just because then it gives you the confidence. And that's the thing, in these conditions, the confidence is key. Getting on the power, hitting the brakes as hard as you can, slowing down. That's all that matters. You could be slow. You could be the Confessor pace. But if you've got no confidence, then an average driver can beat you. So it's very important that you get that confidence. And to be honest, fill it up, stay out as long as possible, and then maybe the very final run, take all the fuel out and go for one absolute max attack run at the very end of the session. But obviously conditions do dictate that. But yeah, that's what I always do: fuel up for the first run, and then at the very end, take all the fuel out and just go for one last ditch effort.
Well, we'll see how the drivers get on. We're watching the Confessor at the moment on a hot lap. He's purple through the first split. Jack Hickey, for the Hickey fans out there, has rejoined the session, you'll be pleased to hear. So hopefully we will see him on track very shortly. Meanwhile, we're still watching the Confessor. As we said, if our math serves us right, 60-point advantage over second place Dan the Man. 52 points he needs to leave this track with, so it is very much in his hands. Dan the Man needs to outscore the Confessor by at least 8 points. So that means that should the Confessor finish any higher than, this is going to test me now, than 8th place, Softy?
No idea. Maths is not my strong point, but let's just say, to make it easy, if Dan the Man gets beat by the Confessor, the Confessor's got the title. It's probably the easiest way, but yeah, as we see, the Confessor does go fastest, obviously, at the moment. The first driver to set that lap time on the circuit, so he'll be in the prime position to get as many runs in as possible.
He certainly will be. We're now watching the Ferrari of Dan the Man snaking his way out of the quick left Honda, dropping down the hill towards Acqua Minerale, which, if you don't know, translates to mineral water. Heading up now to the end of Sector 2, we're going to get a second split time from him. It's not a purple middle sector, so down the man with time to find, perhaps just bedding himself into the session, finding his way around the conditions. Phil Bardwell has gone up into second place, just over 2 tenths off the Confessor, so good lap there from the Mercedes driver, but our attention's turned back to Down the Man now. Just one corner to go as Court Gill in the other Ferrari goes provisional pole. What about this Ferrari? 28.3 to beat. He comes to the line. Down the Man now takes over that mantle on a 28.0.
Yeah, the Confessor is 2 tenths up on his current lap time. He did make quite a few mistakes on that first lap. Obviously, getting the power down, getting a lot of slides on, missing the apexes here and there. So again, this is what I'm referring to. It's that confidence. It's clear that Dan and Court either made their lap stick the first time and had that confidence to push and nailed it, while the Confessor had a few moments. But here we go, the Confessor will go pole. And actually, no, he doesn't. A 28.2. He does improve to second, 3.5 tenths up on his time, but it's slowly building up to it, and that's what you need to do in these conditions. If you can nail the lap first time round, fantastic, but everyone's going to fuel their cars up and go for as many runs as possible as Phil Bardwell now goes into P2. But the Confessor is doing another lap, and I'm sure he'll improve yet again on his current time.
Yep, we should say we've had Big Boy Ewan join us for this race as well in the other Haas. So we've got 2 Haas drivers out there on track, which is good for them. Jack Pearson has already put it in the wall and binned it, so he is going to be no better than 16th. Jack Hickey is on an outlap at the moment, just about to start a time lap, and there he goes. So we'll keep an eye on his progress. Down the Man, still finding time, Softy, and just a couple of corners to go. He might be about to put that benchmark even further away from the rest of them.
He is, yeah, and he's got a car ahead of him which gave him a bit of a slipstream, but he was 2 and a bit tenths up, and it is now a 10.5, so he actually lost a bit of time in that final sector, but the Confessor, I believe, according to the set times, is 1.2 seconds down on his lap, so he's either coming into the pits this lap for another set of wets, or he's decided to recharge his ERS on this lap and go for another run.
Yep, we've now got Jonas not improving through the second split, perhaps. Doesn't look like it's raining as much, Softy. I say that, it's now looks like it's pouring it down, but how close are the inters and the wet tyres, and will we start to see perhaps some drivers brave some wet weather, some intermediate tyres for that slight advantage?
I think at the end, the only thing that matters is what the tyre says in the pits, because that does give you a live update on how close the tyres are and which is faster. So I think if you're within 2 to 3 tenths of the switchover and it's the end of the session, you may as well go for it, because chances are by the time you do an outlap, it probably will be either the crossover point or it may be slightly quicker. But yeah, I mean, at this moment in time, I think it is too wet by the looks of it. It's always hard to tell from the spectator cams on what tyre is quicker or when that switchover is. But at the minute, I just think it's a bit too much of a risk. You may as well keep getting that confidence and then seeing how it is for your final run. If you think it's a close switchover, go for it. If not, then stay on the tyres you're on in terms of wet tyres. But the Confessor is 4 tenths up on his current time, so obviously he is turning that dial. He is up in those engine modes, and this should hopefully for him go provisional pole if he nails these final few corners.
Yeah, we shall but see. Round the penultimate corner, around the final corner now. McLaren driver on his way to the line, perhaps on his way to the title as well, and he comes across the line. He improves his time to a 27.6, so he gives himself a 3/10 of a second advantage over Down the Man, who's just come into the pits. Phil Bardwell not improving on his lap. The RT Jordan's just jumped up into 5th place. Good lap from him. Jean has been shuffled down now to 7th place. Jackie, he's only done the 1 lap so far on the wets, but finding time in the middle sector there, Softy. Purple, best overall, 1.3 up on his personal best.
Yeah, and obviously we'll see what he does across, obviously, the line when he gets to it. But one thing I'd actually quickly like to point out, and it's not something that I think I've really mentioned much this season, or if at all, but it's actually very important when it comes to wet conditions: tyre pressures. So in the dry conditions, realistically, you want to run minimum, maybe 1 or 2 clicks from the bottom, otherwise your tyres overheat. In the wet conditions, you actually want to be running relatively high tyre pressures to get that tyre temperature, because don't forget, you can change your tyre pressures prior to the race. They're not locked in parc ferme, so you are able to run different tyre pressures from qualifying to the race. So if it is dry, again, lower those tyre pressures. But in this quali session, you want to run about mid, or 1 or 2 clicks from the middle to give you the best tyre grip. So it'll be interesting to see as Kai goes fastest then as Jean actually on his current lap is actually invalidated there. But yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if people are running higher tyre pressures purely for qualifying to try and get that maximum grip.
Oh, Kai's first lap. That's an incredible time. The RT Jordan's just gone up into 4th place now as well. But actually, no, sorry, it was his first. So he's gone out on new tyres. Forgive me. Kai's just gone out on new tyres. So that is why perhaps he has jumped to the top of the order. Jean-Luc Taylor coming out the final corner, doesn't peel off into the pits. We've got Mercedes going almost sideways behind him. That's Phil Bargewell, who's about to gear up for another run. Meanwhile, Viva La Merco coming out the final corner now. Doesn't look like he's going to improve. He's certainly not going to improve because he's peeled into the pits. Down the Man's just left the pits for what is going to be his final run. According to my tyre data I've got in front of me here, Softy, he's not put on new tyres.
It'll be unusual if he's not. I'll probably say that probably is a mistake from the game there, to be honest, if that is the case, because it would be unusual unless the race is wet potentially, and he's thinking I want to save a set. Unlikely though, but again we don't know really what the race weather is. I assume it's going to be dry because it is very rare that it is ever wet, but yeah, maybe he's just trying a different strategy. Maybe he thinks, well, I'd rather just keep these tyres for this run and then pit again with three minutes to go, put a new set on for there, and the Professor yet again goes fastest. But yeah, we'll see come the end of the session or come the last few minutes if Dan does put on a new fresh set of tyres, unless it was a mistake of his.
Yeah, interesting. Has he come into the pits again? No, he's staying out. So it does seem like he's giving those used tyres a go. Court Gill's finding time in the first sector, 2 temps up on his personal best. Jean-Luc Taylor's just put himself up into 5th place. Phil Bartels just started another lap as well. Court then dropping down the hill, just about keeping it in the white lines, but he's fighting that car a lot. So you can see just how bad the conditions are. It's evident. All of the drivers struggling.
Yeah, I think you can definitely see that the circuit is getting a bit dry. Obviously, times are slowly coming down as Dan the Man is a 10th and a half up on his time going into Sector 2. But yeah, I think that everyone is. I think it's just the wet tyres. Naturally, wet conditions are going to be very difficult. The wet tyres aren't that good, to be honest, in terms of the feel and things like that. So the cars are very squirrely, especially around here with the circuit undulating a lot. Slow speed, fast corners, etc. So it's just about trying to be as smooth as you can on the power, on the brakes, and trying to take that momentum through the corners, because the momentum is what will gain you so much time in the wet conditions. And Dan is now nearly 2.5 tenths up on his lap going into that final sector.
Yeah, we've just seen Court put himself up into P3. Speed Kai once again goes quicker as the Confessors dived into the pits to put on a new set of wets for one more go. Down the Man then straightens it up on the used tyres, we believe, and does peel into the pits. So Softy, maybe it was a mistake, but to have started a lap seems a bit odd.
Yeah, I mean, he probably went out thinking, well, you know what, I may as well try and get my eye in a bit more, again, get that confidence, get that experience of these wet conditions. Again, the conditions are always changing when it comes to dynamic weather, which we run in TGP. So, it's not going to cost him much, because, what he's going to do now, as mentioned, he's going to, go out probably with 1 or 2 laps of fuel on a fresh set of softs, hopefully a fresh set of softs for him, and then absolutely wring its neck, win it or bin it as such. So, and I think that's what a lot of drivers are doing now. Obviously, half the field is in the pit, so they'll all be gearing up for those final runs. But hopefully, with all of them doing the same strategy, there may be a bit of spray, maybe getting in each other's way on the outlap, and people not possibly getting the perfect tyre warm up on the outlap for those final runs. So it's going to be interesting to see what the drivers do and if they can make space for each other. But they will all be, at this point, taking all of that fuel out, getting those new fresh set of tyres, probably waiting until the last minute as well if they can get away with it, to ensure that the track is at the absolute best condition it can be.
Yeah, we've got a few drivers out there on laps at the moment. Magic Poop Cannon's just started one. Dan Morris on a lap, he's improving. So let's see how the William driver gets on at the moment. He came into TGP1 like a bull in the china shop with pole in this first outing, but hasn't really been able to mimic that form ever since. His teammate is up in 5th place. Dan Morris through the second split now, half a second up on his personal best. Phil Bargero's put the inters on.
Yes, he has. He's thinking about it. And again, this is what I mean. You know, it may be getting relatively close to that switch over. And, you know, if you're in that mid-pack and he is coming out on those inters as well, so he's not just sitting on the pitch trying to dummy everyone. He is on those inters. So, yeah, Phil, I mean, he's in 10th, so he's got nothing to lose and potentially everything to gain. So, but he does appear to be the only one so far that is trying this strategy. So, you know, it could be a very lucky and strategic call. It could be a disaster. So, but again, if he's in 11th, he has got nothing to lose.
No, Dan Morris has just gone P3. Good lap from him. Phil Barswell, as you said, on and out lap. Jack Hickey just about to start a flying lap. We've got the Confessor just coming around to the final few corners. And down the man through the first sector on his out lap. So Jack Hickey then. Let's ride on board with the Red Bull driver. And through the Tamburello chicane he goes. A lot slower these days than it used to be. A lot slower in these conditions than they would be in the dry running. But we're going to get a split one time from Hickey in just a few moments' time. So we'll see how he's doing in comparison to his personal best. A little bit squirrely on the exit. ERT Jordan, his teammate, has just gone into 3rd place. Jack Hickey, 2.5 tenths up Softy. It's looking good at the moment for the Red Bull driver. He's going to get this one and one more, is he?
I think if he got the fuel, he definitely will get another run. It's again a 1 minute 27 lap here at the minute, but yeah, he's taking it quite easy. Just again trying to take that momentum, avoid the oversteer and stuff. But just a quick one as well. The Confessor is actually 10.5 up going into the second sector on his lap, but he does have a few cars ahead of him, so it's going to be nip and tuck whether the Confessor does get it. But I'm going to assume the Confessor will get it because of who it is. So it is looking close. Obviously, the conditions are improving, so everyone should realistically improve on their laps, but it's going to be interesting more so if Phil Bardwell is able to improve on his one and only run on those intermediates.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on Phil, who's just coming towards the penultimate corner now. Jack Hickey then round the final corner. Are we going to see an improvement from the Red Bull driver? Straightens the car up towards the line, 27.3 to beat, and he does a 28.1 to only just a personal best. And Phil Bardwell
main straight
has ruined the opportunity we had to judge how quick the intermediate tyres were. He's binned it, as Softy said there, coming towards the start-finish straight. The Confessor,
don't think it was ready, to be honest.
Fine. The Confessor seems to have had a bit of a problem as well, Softy. He's come across the line, but not with much pace. I don't know if he spun on the last corner, perhaps?
No, I think he backed out of it. As I mentioned a bit earlier on in his lap, he did have a bit of traffic ahead of him, so I think he just caught it at the wrong time and probably thought, well, I'm going to back out of it and just try one more lap as Dom retires from 9th, and Phil is obviously finishing in 11th after binning it. Before the pit entry, actually, so it was obvious that those tyres clearly weren't up to temperature, as the Confessor just under a 10.5 yet again faster than his previous lap. He does have that car ahead of him, which I think is the Mercedes. It's not the Mercedes because both Mercedes are out, actually, so ignore that one as Viva La Merca goes 3rd on his final run there on those wet tyres. So the Confessor then is improving on his current lap as Speed Kai has invalidated his lap, so the Speed Kai will not be improving, and potentially that's going to cost him a provisional or real pole position. So the Confessor then getting a bit squirrely on the curbs. Is it going to be improvement? I'm sure it probably will. He's still a 10.5 up. How does he do this final chicane? Takes all the curb on the inside, all the curb on the left-hander as well. That would have gained him a bit of time. Very easy to lose your rear end over there and just spin it. So that car ahead of him is not getting closer, so that's always a good sign. He's not going to get distracted too much, but here we go, second class corner, ride all the curb on the entry, ride all the curb on the exit, avoid the curb on the inside of this left-hander and use it all on the outside, and I think he's probably going to improve. I'm going to say about 2 tenths potentially here, and what is it going to be? It is pole, and it's actually 6 tenths he ended up gaining there, so he gained a lot in that final sector.
Yeah, he did. Fantastic lap from the Confessor to move himself up into provisional pole, the only man into the 1 minute 26s, and once again a dominant qualifying performance from the man who is well on his way to taking his second TGP1 title, and his first title this will be since F1 2017, and still remains the only person to beat my good co-commentator to a TGP1 title, but more of that later. let's focus on this for now, as the Confessor's taken yet another pole position. Speed Kai, great session for him in the Alpine, joining him on the front rows. And All Williams, second row. Dan Morris out qualifying John. Dan the Man in P5 with Viva Lamerco P6. ERT Jordan, good outing for him in the Red Bull, up in P7, and with Magic Poop Cannon in P8. Caught down in 9th, he would have been hoping for a little bit more. Mayor Quimby is in P10, joined by his teammate in P11. Big Boy Ewan is in P12. 13th was St. Dom Smith. Jack Hickey all the way down in 14th. Phil Bargewell crashed out in 15th. Jack Pearson crashed out in 16th. So, Softy, obviously we've got to wait and see whether it's wet or dry, but what should we see from the race in front of us?
I think it's going to be quite close, hopefully. Fingers crossed, of course, it's close, but this circuit is very different in the dry. You can take a lot of speed through the corners. Very easy to get squirrely on the curbs as well, especially with those little sausage curbs a bit further on the inside. So it's very easy to cut it a bit too much, hit one of those curbs, especially that first chicane. Of course, you want to take as much speed through it as possible, but it can bite you. So it's a whole different ball game in the dry. A lot faster, obviously, speed. And is it going to be dry? I'm going to assume it is, and it is dry, but it is a bit cloudy. So, again, there could be a chance of rain potentially in this race. But I'd probably say, same as normal. I think the Confessor will probably try and go on the medium tyres at the start. He's got that pace advantage. I mean, looking at the race director at the minute, the Confessor's on the mediums. Dan Morrison, third, is on the mediums. Viva Lamerco, ERT Jordan, 6th and 7th are on the mediums. Quimby, Mr. Giapelli and Big Boy Hewan also on the mediums at the minute, with Jack Pearson at the back. The rest of them are on softs, as Speed Kai has actually switched to the mediums. So yeah, we're getting a bit of a mix again. The Confessor, I think, knows that the two cars behind him aren't going to be challenging him. So yeah, I think he's pretty confident of winning this race as always.
Well, let's find out. And the race that could decide the title, we are ready on the grid. We've got 3, 4, 5 lights in Imola. And once again, we're underway and the races go. And it's a good getaway from Confessor, but I'll tell you who's got a great start, and that's Jean, already up to third. And on the run down to turn number 1, he's alongside the Alpine, trying to go around the young way. Round the outside, he's going to try and go with Kai. Dan Morris is late on the brakes and almost made contact with the Alpine, and John actually drops back down into 4th place in all of that. But the Confessor has had exactly the start he would have wanted. Pulled out already over a second on the man in 2nd place and clearing off into the distance as the Williams are now being put under pressure. Jean-Luc Taylor under pressure from Dan the Man, and Dan the Man's going to send it up the inside into the hairpin. There's almost contact, but for the moment at least, Jean hangs on.
Yeah, obviously Jean actually looking like he was really going to attack 2nd and 3rd in that first few corners, and actually goes down to P4 as Viva Lamerco has been overtaken by Court in that first sector. Very easy to lose all your momentum through here because of it's sort of a one-line circuit for the most part, other than that main straight. But as we see Jean actually now up the inside of Dan Morris into that chicane. So that is P3 for Jean-Luc Taylor there, ahead of his teammate, and hopefully will be closing up on Speed Kai now. But Speed Kai does decent around here.
Fantastically opportunistic move there from Jean on the soft tyres. Dan Morris, his teammate, on the medium, so he knew he had to get that move done, and makes his way now up into 3rd place and can set his attentions on the 2 cars in front of him. The Confessor crosses the line with a 1.2 second advantage, and actually it's Dan the Man who's the Dan that looks like he's on the move on the back of Dan Morris. And as we head towards turn number 1, the Ferrari is close, but not close enough, Softy, to make a move.
Yeah, not quite. Again, it's very easy to sort of over push here with these curbs, as I mentioned a bit earlier on. But he's right behind Dan Morris now. He'll be wanting to get past him as quickly as he can, because Dan knows that. Should I say Dan the Man knows that he should have the pace over Dan Morris, and he won't want Jean in 3rd to get too far ahead. Of course, Jean is on those soft tyres, while the cars around him are on those mediums. And a quick one from Jack Hickey. He is in the pits. Sadly, he did get front wing damage on that first lap, so that is his race pretty much ruined to begin with, and he's on medium tyres. Yep,
disappointing for Jack Hickey. Meanwhile, Dan the Man putting all kinds of pressure on Dan Morris, and that's allowing Court, also on the soft tyres, to get pretty close. So if Dan's going to have any shot at keeping this title fight alive into the final week, he's got to displace of his namesake pretty swiftly. Further back, ERT Jordan dropped behind Mr. Giapelli. Mr. Giapelli having a great start up into 8th place. And we're seeing Dan still all over the back of Dan Morris. No DRS yet. That's going to be enabled after the completion of this lap. So he's not going to have the DRS's Kai. Now within half a second of the Confessor. Where's that come from? Let's keep an eye on the Dans for the moment, but Speed Kai deciding to turn up the wick a little bit on the Confessor in front of him.
Yeah, he's using a lot more ERS. Obviously, the Confessor's on 86% ERS. Kai is on 65, so he is using that ERS to keep within range of the Confessor, but he'll be waiting to get that DRS wide open, of course. And end of the day, that's what you need to do. You need to push the Confessor to make a mistake, because he is prone to mistakes, as we've seen last season and this season so far as well. But at the minute, Dan the Man 3/10 behind Dan Morris, so he's still not able to get past as yet. But it should be a bit easier for him down the main straight on this lap now that DRS will be active for him.
Yeah, Dan just 2/10 behind, almost integral to the back of that Williams car. He ran a little bit wide there, Dan, actually. That could cost him a little bit. That's maybe giving a little bit of hope to his teammate Court right behind. So we've got McLaren leading, Alpine second, the 2 Williams, and then the 2 Ferraris. And the Tifosi out there, this is the track closest to Ferrari's base in Maranello, will be hoping that at least one of their 2 cars can displace at least one of the Williamses. But you said the man in the best place to do that at the moment is Dan the Man. And Dan Morris just in front of him now. These 2 Linus Turners, they have been ever since the start of the race. And ever since Jean put that move on Dan Morris. So Dan the Man now, DRS open. Surely this is going to be as easy or overtake as you like, but Dan Morris has got some good straight line speed. That Williams, a slippery car in a straight line, but it's no match for the Ferrari with DRS, and Dan the Man up into 4th place.
Yeah, nice and easy there. Obviously, that the DRS is quite powerful around here, as we actually caught up the inside then of Dan Morris. Obviously, that move led to this move as well. So as Kurt runs it a bit wide there, is Dan Morris going to think about going around the outside or even going up the inside? He's thinking about it, but he doesn't quite have the grip. Obviously, caught on those soft tyres. Dan Morris on those mediums, so Dan Morris will recoup now some of that urge. I think he'll sit behind obviously Kurt for the moment and probably try and attack him a bit later on. But Speed Kai at the front, still keeping within the second of the Confessor. The Confessor still got 89% ERS to Kai's 65, so Kai is using ERS to keep that gap within that 1 second. But again, if you've got that pace without having to use any of your ERS, while the person behind you is using a lot of ERS to keep within that gap, you've got a pace advantage, and that that proves so much in terms of strategy wise when it comes to attacking and defending in the race.
Yeah, it certainly does, and good to see that Kai is able to keep tabs with the Confessor at the moment. Someone able to keep tabs with him is always encouraging. Dan the Man now just 0.6 of a second behind Jean-Luc Taylor with DRS again this lap, but not close enough to make a move. Dan Morris is being put under pressure from Viva La Merco. It's a nice little DRS train forming now, unfortunately for him, behind Court Gill, and Dan might rue Court getting past him. On those soft tyres is Court, down on the mediums, and Court's tyres, you would have thought, Softy, going to be towards the end of their lifespan in the minute. What sort of lap should we be expecting to see some of these drivers on the soft tyres coming into the pits, do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, I've not got a huge experience around here when it comes to actual race distances, but I probably would say you're probably looking at lap 7, lap 8, give or take a few laps is probably the ideal strategy. Tyre wear, it doesn't seem to be that bad round here. It's not amazing, but it's not bad, nowhere near like we saw in China. So yeah, I think you can go either way. You can try the undercut, you can try the overcut if you want, but Dan the Man now really putting pressure on Jean for that final podium position. And as we saw with Dan on Dan action a few laps ago, the DRS is quite powerful around here.
Yep, John also on those soft tyres as well, which might be crying for things to stop in a minute. And Dan the Man much better place this time round, and with the DRS open, he's going to breeze past that Williams and up into 3rd place. So Dan the Man picking off drivers one by one and starting to get a little bit closer to in theory his rival for the title, but nonetheless he's got a hell of a mountain to climb. The Confessor will need to finish in the top 8. Well, as long as he finishes in the top 8, he will win the title.
Yeah, as Magic Poop Cannon sadly has spun at that first chicane down in 14th there, so unfortunate for him. And if Magic Poop Cannon's not careful, he's going to get disqualified because he's done about 1 billion spins with those overheating tyres now. So, but yeah, it's obviously Dan the Man doing what he needs to. He has got a 4.5 second gap that he needs to close on Speed Kai, so it's going to be a bit of a struggle to close that gap, I reckon, in terms of the pace that he's got. But he is on that better strategy, so now he's got clean air, he should be able to hopefully pull that gap a bit. But Dan the Man does not have DRS, whereas Speed Kai does. So, if you've got two people that have got good pace ahead and they slipstreaming each other potentially without costing themselves time, as we see a few yellow flags there, I think that is just Magic Poop Cannon. It is. He's gone for another spin, and Speed Kai sets the fastest lap again. Half a second there. He's on 26% ERS though, whereas the Confessor is on 60%. So, the Confessor is now using a bit of his ERS to defend, but Speed Kai needs to be careful not to go below that 10% mark. Otherwise, it becomes a lot harder to regain that and regen it, and then end up attacking the Confessor.
Yeah, he's certainly keeping within the sort of window that he wants. Mr. Chiapelli's just made his way past Dom Smith. Owen Quimby now putting pressure on the back of ERT Jordan. Haven't seen much from the man from Norfolk this season. Hasn't really had the pace. And the former TGP2 champion, his teammate, also a TGP2 champion. Both of them with multiple titles. Magic Poop Cannon's car just pulled off to the side there. He retired a few moments ago. Viva La Merco also within a second of Dan Morris. The sun's starting to come out in Italy, and maybe the race will start to liven up in a few moments too. We have seen a few cars come into the pits. Jean-Luc Taylor, Court Gill coming into the pits, getting rid of those soft tyres. Phil Barswell, Big Boy Ewan and Jack Hickey, as we know, pitted at the end of lap 1. So watch out for Jean and Court as eventually we'll start to see a few of the front runners coming into the pits as well. But still, Softy, Kai's keeping the Confessor honest. He's not letting him get away with this one.
No, he's not. Again, he is using a bit more ERS, obviously, than the Confessor. I think the pace at the minute doesn't seem to be a massive. Oh, the Confessor's gone! The Confessor's spun! So that is exactly what I was saying. These curves are absolutely dangerous. And that looked like the Confessor actually hit Dan the Man there, but I think it was just him ghosting. But this is what I'm referring to. It's very easy you hit those curves wrong, and they will send you round. So that is potentially the Confessor's win out of the window. He's still not that far behind Speed Kai, so I think he'll be wanting to use a bit more ERS to try and sort of gain some of that time back before he makes his pit stop. But yeah, that's a saviour for Speed Kai there at the minute, and potentially helping Dan the Man try and attempt to keep the title alive until the final week.
Yeah, well, it's worth pointing out the Confessor would still win the title with things as it is. Dan the Man only overthrowing the advantage by 3 points. If Dan was to take the lead of the race, though, that will be a different story. So we'll come back and we'll work out the calculations in a short while. But the Confessor, meanwhile, in third place, 4.1 seconds behind Dan the Man. Dan the Man, 5.5 seconds off the back of Speed Kai. But as you said, Softy, those medium tyres of the Confessors would have taken quite a battering in that spin as well.
Yeah, they would have. Obviously, just it takes a lap, to cool them down. Being gentle, of course. But obviously, Dan Morris is now behind the Confessor. But the Confessor needs to be careful, and this is what I've talked about. Obviously, in that last race as well. Last season we saw the Confessor making so many mistakes, so many spins from the lead, etc. And you put the Confessor under a bit of pressure, and it's always so much easier to crack. And granted, you could have said, he nearly loses it again there by the spectator camera there, but it's always a lot. Naturally, no matter who you are, no matter how good you are, if you get put under pressure, you're more likely to make a mistake. It's just human nature. So, but the Confessor is very prone to these mistakes when he's under pressure, as we've seen, obviously right here, right now, of course. So, not what he'll be wanting, but at the minute, as you say, Dan only gaining a few points on him, so he would still be crowned the TGP1 season 39 champion if things were to end like this. But he's made one mistake this race. I think he'll be sort of counting his ducks very luckily at the minute to say that it couldn't have been a DNF right there.
Yeah, that could have been a very risky moment for the Confessor. He'll be pleased to hear he's got a second advantage over Dan Morris behind him, and Dan with a penalty as well, as we've seen Mayor Quimby peel into the pits, and he's got a 5-second penalty for speeding in said pits, so not ideal for Owen. Speed Kai, still a race leader, keeping the gap around 5.5 seconds to Dan the Man in second place. Dan the Man will be Softy, I mean, it's not bad for Dan, don't get me wrong, but it could have been a lot better.
It could have been, and I think he got let down a bit by his qualifying. It potentially could have been a bit higher up than where he qualified, but it's easy to say that. It's easier said than done, really. But yeah, I mean, in the end, the deciding factor, mainly in 25%, especially now that the safety car has been disabled because it is so broken. It's even more important now that you have the outright pace over the people you're racing. Otherwise, because you're not going to get saved by a safety car. If you're on an opposite strategy, you're not going to get saved by it by looking into a better strategy and things like that. So if you have got the pace advantage, or even as Dan actually then comes into the pits on off those medium tyres, probably onto those softs, as the Confessor then does stay out for another lap, of course, as Dan Morris also comes in. But yeah, it's a lot harder to make the difference now that it's just a straight 25% sprint to the finishers as such. So yeah, but fair play to Dan the man. Obviously he has been quite inconsistent over the past few seasons from race to race. He is the closest contender to the Confessor, and for Dan to, let's say, bring it to the second to last week of the season, I think no one would have expected that earlier on in the season. So we can only appreciate what Dan the man's done this season.
Yeah, I think you're right, to be honest with you. I don't think anyone really expected it to be drawn out this long. All of you who've been following the season know we were all expecting this to be the quickest a title has ever been wrapped up, but it wasn't to be. And the Confessor still, in theory, on course to win the title. Dan the man having taken his pit stop on the soft tyres now with a good bit of space, it has to be said, to Jack Pearson. So he can work with that, and he's, interestingly as well, come out of the pits ahead of Jean-Luc Taylor, who pitted a lot earlier on in this race to go onto the medium tyres. So looking good for Dan the man at the moment to take
the Confessor's in
second place. Yep, the Confessor's in. Speed Kai's staying out then, so Kai must be pretty confident on those medium tyres.
I mean, he's got a 9-second gap, so I don't blame him, to be honest. You may as well, extend your stint. Okay, yeah, you might lose maybe 1 or 2 seconds to the car behind purely because they're on fresh tyres. But by the time you pit, you're going to have fresh tyres, so those roles are going to be reversed with you having the advantage. So, Speed Kai playing it smart here, and I don't blame him. But Dan the man, then, is he going to be ahead of the Confessor? Of course he is. And John's actually going to overtake the Confessor as well there. So the Confessor dropping a few places there on where he needed to, and Jean is currently in a provisional P3.
That would be a swing of 6 points in Dan the man's favour to bring the gap down from 60 to 54. What's happened to the Confessor? Oh, he's dropped behind court. That's it. Okay, that's fine. I thought he'd had another spin. That, however, does mean there's an 8-point swing. So if things ended as they are at the moment, Dan the man would mathematically still be in the title race going into the last week. The gap would be 52 points, the maximum on offering for the last 2 rounds after this race. So the Confessor does need to overtake Court Gill to take the title. Speed Kai has now come into the pits. His 29-second advantage is obviously going to be slashed by Dan the man, but nonetheless, Speed Kai in a dominant position unless Dan can turn things around on the Alpine driver. The Alpine driver underway again, and is going to come out of the pits comfortably in the lead still. But we're watching the Confessor then. He needs to overtake Court. He needs to make this overtake happen on the road. And let's not forget who Court's teammate is. Remind me, Softy, who's Court's teammate?
No idea. Some guy that's in currently P2, but nice and easy from the Confessor. And to be honest, Court can't really do much on that main straight. If someone's right behind you on fresh tyres with DRS and ERS, you can't do too much there. So the Confessor then up to P4, 2.4 seconds behind Jean-Luc Taylor. But I don't think Jean will make it as easy for the Confessor, hopefully, and probably try and help out Dan. And obviously Dan and Jean do go way back in TGP, so they do have a lot of respect for each other, and I'm sure Jean will probably try and hold the Confessor up as much as he can.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. And the Confessor then with 3.5 laps and 2.2 seconds to and tell you what, Dan the man,
He has. I was just about to say that 1.4 seconds behind. He's closed the gap a lot.
That comfortable lead that Kai had, where's that gone? Because I'm not seeing that.
Now I'm going to have a look at the race director just to see if Kai's actually made any sort of mistake, or it doesn't look like it. Obviously, the lap that hang on a minute, actually. Is Speed Kai pitted yet? He has.
Yes,
yeah,
he has.
On the race director, I think, is a bit broken. So this is probably his first lap. So yeah, I don't think he's made a mistake from at least looking at the timing sheets. But yeah, either that or Dan the man is a rocket ship at the minute. But yeah, the gap's now up to 1.7 seconds. So I think maybe he made a few minor mistakes here and there potentially. But I think Dan was hoping that he was close enough to get DRS. But Speed Kai is now pulling that gap back.
Meanwhile, Big Boy Ewan's just made a move on Owen Quimby for 9th place. So the Haas moving up into the top 9. Phil Barswell, the meat in a Haas sandwich at the moment. And Big Boy Ewan will be hoping to get his head down and get closer to that Mercedes. Someone who is getting pretty close. The Confessor now just 0.8 of a second behind Jean-Luc Taylor, Softy. This could end up being another ET overtake, but I'm sure, as you said, with Jean's history with Dan the man and his history in TGP1, it's not going to want to make this too easy for the McLaren driver.
No, obviously it just depends on when, the ERS management. Obviously, John has only got 40% ERS, so it's not as if he can really defend down that main straight either. Now, the Confessor's got 63, so realistically, John has not played it smart with his ERS usage to actually defend. So I think this is going to be a very easy move for the Confessor down into turn 1 and turn 2.
Yeah, well, we will find out in just a few moments. The Confessor just a quarter of a second behind John as they cross the line. DRS open. John is giving it all he's got, but as on the penultimate lap, the Confessor has moved himself back up into the top 3, and this now means he is well on course for the title, barring any more mistakes. We've seen one from the Confessor already in this race. He ran a little bit wide there. That might give John a little bit of hope that this one isn't over. And the McLaren driver, though, is where he needs to be to take his second TGP1 title. That's all still to come. The Dan the Man's challenge on Kai has fallen away, sadly for him. 3.1 seconds is the gap now between the top 2, and that also gives Kai about 1/10 of a second buffer should he pick up a penalty. Let's hope for his sake he does not, and Kai well on his course for his second race victory of the season. Court Gill, meanwhile, has been passed by Dan Morris, so both Williams in the top 5. They'll be pleased with that. Mayor Quimby's got back past Big Boy Ewan. Jordan's now joining the party as well. Dom Smith and Jack Pearson are having a right old ding-dong further back as well. Let's give those two a little bit of airtime. Softy, these two TGP old-timers, shall we call them, and Dom Smith fancying a run on Jack Pearson, it seems.
Yeah, obviously Dom Smith doing everything he can. Obviously it is a fight for P12, so I'm sure they probably both want to be higher up, but this is where their pace is at the minute. But a bit of a poor run out of that final corner for Dom Smith, but Jack Pearson has on 3% ERS, so he's derating, so Dom is going to gain quite a lot down this main straight, although Dom is probably not going to be close enough to make a move unless he dives it up the inside. He's probably thinking about it. No, he thinks better of it. Jack uses all those curbs he can. He needs to be very careful not to get any more penalties because he's already got penalty for corner cut in there. So yeah, I think it's going to be hard now with the rest of this lap for Dom Smith to potentially get ahead of Jack Pearson on the circuit at least. But you never know. It's always good to watch some battles, even if it is for further down. Yeah,
well, I have to say, he came out of nowhere a little bit in qualifying, and his pace in the race certainly came out from nowhere as well, as Kieran's already weaving as he come towards the penultimate corner. He rounds the penultimate corner. He's just got one to go. The Alpine driver has put on one hell of a display in front of the Tifosi. It's not the colour car they wanted to see winning, but Kieran's dominant display. He even has time to slow down before the line. He takes the win, but it's the man who's riding the final corner now. The Confessor across the line to take 3rd place, and he takes the championship with it. The TGP1 title for season 39 goes the McLaren's way. He did eventually everything he needed to do to win the championship, but he didn't half make it difficult for himself in the process. He span in the early exchanges, which bumped him down the order and put him behind Down the Man. Down the Man, a brave showing. He came back to 2nd place, but it just wasn't enough in the end. The consistency and the pace that we saw from this McLaren driver earlier in the season gave him the platform he needed to take his 2nd TGP1 crown. And Softy, I for one think he's done a splendid job this season.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been in the class of the field again. He's shown that he's got The pace. He shows you he's got the consistency as well. He makes a few mistakes here and there, but again, everyone makes mistakes when under pressure. So, class of the field, fully well deserved that he's won this title. It's a shame for him that he didn't win it as soon as he should have and could have, due to obviously personal things and obviously pneumonia, of course. So, but end of the day, it doesn't matter when you win it; it matters if you win it. And he has been the class of the field, and he should hopefully be able to carry that momentum onto F1 23 and season 40, I believe it is, season 40 of TGP1. Bloody hell!
Well, it certainly is exciting. We've certainly enjoyed watching him this season. I have to say, it's been a privilege and an honour to see him giving it his all, and really good stuff. Really good stuff from a very, very classy driver. And as we said, surely we'll see a little bit more from him to come. But let's focus on the race order for now. So Kai is your race winner. Started second on the grid, but had to work for the win. Dan the Man came home in P2. The Confessor, your TGP1 champion, started on pole, got the fastest lap, but had to settle for third place. Jean was fourth, Court Gill P5. Dan Morris was P6 with Viva Lamerco 7th. Phil Boswell in P8 after his penalties. ELT Jordan was 9th. Big Boy Ewan in 10th. Dom Smith in the end did come ahead of Owen and Jack Pearson in 11th. Mr. Giapelli 14th. Jack Hickey a lonely 15th. And Magic Poop Cannon, your only retiree. Now, I am very, very pleased to say that the man we have just watched make it difficult for himself, I think it would be polite to say. He has joined us in the commentary box. The Confessor, Shane, Odems, whatever you want to be called. Congratulations, you are a two-time TGP1 champion. Tell us how it feels.
It's the greatest day of my life, mate.
It doesn't surprise me. It's fantastic to hear. But just talk us through the emotions in that Imola race. You're winning the race. You've got Kai who's keeping you honest, and then you make a mistake. But first of all, tell us what happened.
I feel like I compromised my setup too much for the rain, and I just never really got used to it. And it was annoying because Kieran was pressuring me for like the entire stint, and I had so much ERS that I was fine. And the second he stops pressuring me, and he loses a bit of time to me, I just fucking spin. I don't know what it was. It's just like that tiny bit of extra traction just left me. Off I went. Pretty annoying. And
what were you thinking in that moment? Obviously, that's quite a sudden instant to take place. Let's not forget. And what were you thinking in the helmet at the time? Were you thinking it's all gone? It's gone away. Obviously, you kept it out of the wall, but you're in the gravel. You're losing positions. You're losing time. Dan the Man's got ahead of you. What's going through your mind at that moment?
First thing was keep ahead of Dan Morris. After that, it was just, can I still win? I was in my house calculating, am I quick enough to still win this? Quick enough to beat Dan? But then I think I was just really angry. So I made another mistake. So, head went a bit, but I guess that is.
Well, it's been a pleasure to watch you all season. We've still got 2 races to go left in the season, but so far, at least, what's been your race of the season? What's been your highlight that we've seen you driving so far?
One of them, I want to say this qualifying session, I had a lot of fun just pounding laps in the wet with a bunch of fuel in the car. Other than that, I don't know. They've all been sort of, I don't want to be a dick, but all my wins have been fairly easy. I haven't really fought for any of them. So I'll say Bahrain, where I was just sort of terrible, but I had a fun race. So that's my moment of the season.
Well, Shane, it's been a pleasure watching you out there on track. One question that Softy had as you were crossing the line: can you keep this form into F1 23? Are we going to see you up there still?
I think so, because when I first played 22 in the 37 or 8, I wasn't very good. I hadn't league raced in a while, so I'm getting back into it. Now I think at the start of 2020 probably will be back up to my normal. So yeah, hopefully I'll have hopefully Softy will be racing too.
I'd like that, to be quite honest with you. I'd like to see the two of you going up against it again. As I said in commentary earlier, you are the only man to have beaten Softy to a title. Softy, any thoughts?
Oh, wait and see. If hopefully Dom doesn't make any stupid rules that keep me out, then it's a high possibility that I may rejoin for next season. So we will wait and see. But I would like to correct you there, Mike. Matt Tibos is the only other driver, as well as actually Jake Davies, that has beaten me to a title. Although Matt Tibos is the only one that beat me when I was there the entire season.
Well, maybe the two of you will come together next season. I'd certainly like to see it. It'd be a shame to lose you from the commentary box, Softy, but I'd much rather see you back giving this guy a good run for his money. Shane, congratulations once again. Well done. And well, obviously, we're going to see you tearing up the field next week again, I'm sure, aren't we?
Yeah, what tracks are next week?
Yes.
Japan and Britain, I believe.
Britain. Okay. Britain, I might start at the back, just for...
Well, you heard it here first, everybody. The Confessor is going for Driver of the Day next week, it seems. So, Confessor, once again, thank you very much for joining us in the commentary box. It's been a pleasure, as always, to talk to you. And good luck next week. And enjoy the celebrations of your latest TGP title.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, Softy, we're pretty much done here. Just for our listeners, final thoughts on Shane's season before, obviously, he's winning the title before the last week. Final thoughts on what we've seen him achieve this season.
Outstanding, perfect, very few mistakes, class of the field, showing that he's got considerably more pace than anyone else, for the most part. So, well done to him, and it was a pleasure watching him drive.
Yeah, I'll certainly second that. Well, we've still got another week of action to go. Next week, as you heard, we're going to be racing in Japan and Britain, and we hope that you'll be joining us then. But once again, this has been the TGP series, been a production for the TGP series. I've been Mike Noon, he's been Softcop. We'll see you on PS4, but for now, at least, good night.